Okay, so again, welcome everyone. So we're located on both the San Francisco and the Stockton campus, and you can see on the picture we have two teams of our audiologists who practice and see patients in both of our locations. So, if you're located somewhere around us, you can come to us in either one of our locations. So the next slide we have here is our San Francisco audiology staff. I'm located in the San Francisco campus along with the rest of our faculty and staff, some of which you might have the pleasure of seeing at our clinic if you're in the San Francisco area. And we also have the Stockton staff, where Dr. Gale is the director of audiology there. And these are the folks on the Stockton campus. So for today's agenda, we'll be talking about healthy hearing. That's one of the first things we'll be talking about. And then the consequences of untreated hearing loss, how hearing loss affects the brain. And lastly, we'll wrap up with any treatment and preventions of hearing loss. So let's start from a public health perspective to see how common is a clinically significant hearing loss. So from the United States population, we see that hearing loss doubles with every decade of life. And when you see, and when you look at the US population, we can see that the prevalence, how common hearing loss actually is. So we can see that it starts around age 40. We see 6.5% of the individuals have some type of mild hearing loss. And as we increase in age to 50s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, we have more hearing loss in the moderate category. Okay, so about 38.2 million, which is 14.3% of Americans age 12 and older, have some type of hearing loss. And this graph will show you the age and severity of hearing loss in terms of percentage by age group. So, I mean, this is something probably many of us recognize to some degree. As we get older, our older populations have more of a trouble hearing, but you might not realize this to this extent. So this basically means that by the time we look at our friends, families, family members, and society, everyone 70 and above, nearly about 2/3. So every 2 out of 3 adults over the age of 70 has a meaningful hearing impairment. So if we just look at the most basic stepping stones in hearing treatment and just the use of hearing aids, we look at people in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. The blue bars represent folks with hearing loss, and the red bars represent hearing aid use in the United States. We can see that hearing aid use is actually really, really low. And this is actually one of the initial treatments of hearing loss per se. So, just the use of a hearing aid. We see that self-report of hearing aid use is only about 15 to 20% of the people who could possibly benefit from hearing aids. So, and with the current advancements in research, some of the very basic questions and concerns about hearing loss are just being addressed. So the consequences of hearing loss is the first one. Aside from not being able to hear, are there any other consequences of hearing loss? What is this impact of treating hearing loss? How does hearing loss tie into healthy aging? Are there any other issues besides the quality of life? And what happens if you treat it? Rehabilitative counseling, does it make a difference? So if we do think hearing is important, can interventions really make a difference? And how can we intervene when such a large population of people with hearing loss are not being treated or fitted with hearing aids? So with that, let's talk a little bit about healthy aging. Okay, so what is the relationship between healthy aging, healthy hearing, and cognition? Based on the World Health Organization, the WHO, this defines healthy aging as the process of developing and maintaining the functional ability that enables well-being in the older age. So the goal of this is to be disease and disability free with high physical and cognitive function as well as active engagement with life. So basically, what this healthy aging means is making lifestyle choices that enable individuals to keep doing the things you need to do to take care of yourself. So basically, your activities of daily living, as well as the things you want to do to enjoy life for as long as you can. Okay, so that's your overall definition of healthy aging. So let's take a look as to how this ties in with healthy hearing. Healthy hearing is defined by hearing well enough with or without hearing aids or other technology to be able to do the things you need to do, as well as the things you want to do to participate in and enjoy life. Healthy hearing, we know now through all of these years of research, results in positive health outcomes, increased social engagement, improvements in communication, as well as lowering the risk of disorders and conditions such as depression. Unhealthy hearing, on the other hand, is defined as hearing loss that is not treated. Okay, so untreated hearing loss is unhealthy hearing. We know that healthy hearing contributes to healthy aging. So hearing loss, again, we saw is very common among older adults and can contribute to poorer health, leading to things like social disengagement, increased risk for cognitive decline, and leading to reduced quality of life in the older years. There's a growing concern that hearing loss must be factored into social policies to really promote this healthy aging. And we can see in this cartoon, healthy hearing equals healthy brain. Okay, so this is how we show that healthy hearing contributes to healthy aging and to a healthy lifestyle in our older years. Hearing loss in older adults. So age-related hearing loss is also known as presbycusis. This is one of the most common conditions affecting our older adults. We see in this graph that approximately 1 in 3 people between the ages 65 and 74 have hearing loss, and approximately half of those that are 75 plus have some degree of hearing difficulties. And this was published by Frank Lin, who is a public health expert on hearing loss and the epidemiology aspect of hearing loss and cognitive load. In terms of age-related hearing loss, loss of hearing that occurs, it's defined by loss of hearing that occurs in almost all of us as we get older. It occurs in both ears, affecting them equally. And because the loss is gradual, a lot of people might not realize that they've lost their ability to hear. We know that there's no way to restore age-related hearing loss. And usually by the time someone's around 50, they start to notice some age-related changes in their hearing. So this could be increased difficulty in hearing soft sounds, or having a hard time listening to their to children's voices, so their grandkids, and having a hard time hearing things that they've once heard. So for example, birds chirping at the park. Causes of age-related hearing loss. So there's a few things that can contribute or cause this age-related changes in the auditory system. The most common cause is changes in the inner ear due to aging. So we know that just like any other organ system in the body, there's changes in the hearing function. And one of the most notable changes is the damages or the loss of hair cells within the inner ear or the cochlea. So we can see here in this picture, we have normal hair cells to the very left. So these hair cells are very neat and in rows. We see that with age or with some trauma, hair cells can become damaged. So in the middle picture, we have some damaged hair cells. And to the very right, we see some severely damaged hair cells. Okay, it could be the later onset of this aging process, could be damage to noise exposure, and so on. So unlike other species, for example, birds and chicken, hair cells in humans do not regenerate. Okay, so once we lose hair cells from aging or any other incidences, we will have what we experience as a hearing loss. So changes in auditory perception and auditory function. So aside from changes in the inner ear, there could also be changes in the middle ear or complex changes along the nerve pathway from the ear to the brain. So this could also be age-related degeneration of the auditory nerve, as well as age-related changes in the middle ear. And lastly, certain medications can play a role in hearing loss and exacerbate this age-related hearing loss. So for example, drugs such as IV antibiotics and chemotherapy drugs are known to damage hearing. So there's a synergistic effect, meaning a combined effect of age-related changes plus medications that cause hearing loss to worsen age-related hearing loss. So we can see here on the picture to the right, excessive noise exposure. So these are all factors that can contribute or cause or worsen our age-related hearing loss. We have the excessive noise exposure throughout life, family history of age-related hearing loss, smoking, ototoxic medications, and certain medical conditions. So there's a lot of very common medical conditions, for example, diabetes, high blood pressure, heart disease, that have links to changes in auditory system, namely hearing loss. So next we'll be talking about the general signs of hearing loss. So what are some early signs that we know there are changes in the auditory system and that there may be hearing loss? One of the first few signs of age-related changes in hearing function is difficulty hearing high-frequency sounds. So consonant sounds such as the S sound and the TH sound may become gradually more difficult for you to hear. And there can be confusions or misunderstandings when we hear these sounds. So for example, words such as sink and think, there can be confusions or misunderstandings of those sounds. Also, another example, fish versus dish. So those with hearing loss may also have a hard time distinguishing between those two when they're isolated. Speech may become more difficult to hear, especially in noisy environments. One of the common complaints in older individuals is, it's hard to hear speech in background noise, particularly in meetings for those who are still working or when they're attending social events at a restaurant and so on. There can be difficulty hearing in background noise. And lastly, females or children's voices may become more difficult to hear. And that's because naturally females and children's voices are in the higher frequencies. Okay, so hearing loss in older age-related hearing loss begins in the higher frequencies. And because children's and females' voices are in those regions, they might become harder for them to hear. Sounds are oftentimes too soft and louder sounds are too loud. People with hearing loss may sometimes have sensitivities to loud sounds where they have a more narrow dynamic range. Okay, so quiet sounds are too soft or too quiet because of hearing loss, because they have a shift in their hearing threshold, and loud sounds become too loud or become distorted. Okay, speech can become distorted when they become too loud. People may also experience tinnitus or ringing in the ears. Okay, so this is sometimes one of the initial signs and symptoms of changes in the auditory system. Tinnitus or ringing in the ears appears when there's an increase in spontaneous nerve activity. And sometimes when with people who have hearing loss, there is a decrease in the input to the auditory system. So our brain would generate ringing or extra noises in the ears are perceived as tinnitus. And lastly, friends and family may be the first to notice if there's signs of hearing loss. They might be missing details during conversations. They might not be paying attention during conversations because it's difficult for them to follow. They might be experiencing listening fatigue, if of having to strain to hear. And all of this may lead to concerns about dementia because there's always a realm of social isolation and not being able to hear and participate well in conversations that they were used to. So we know that all of this is from your brain and it's not your ears. Your brains and your ears work together as a system. Okay, so your brain performs four key tasks when you listen. So it helps you to orient. So the brain constantly uses both ears to orient itself and know what's happening in the environment. Orientation is very important because then you're able to hear where sounds are coming from. So for example, when you're outside on a busy street or when you're driving, you know where the ambulance or where the fire trucks are coming from and to stay away from those environments. Number two, your brain depends on its ability to recognize a sound in order to make sense of it. Okay, so you have to first recognize what the sound is before you can comprehend and understand its presence. Number three is to focus. The brain uses both ears to focus on what's important, especially in noisy situations. And this focus may be extra needed when you're in a noisy environment. For example, when you're at a social gathering where there's a lot of people, or when you're dining in a very busy or noisy restaurant. You really have to focus on what the people around you or the people you're with, what they're saying to really piece out that information from what's in the background chatter. And lastly, the brain helps to separate the relevant sounds from competing noise. Again, this is trying to take out what's important for us to understand and comprehend the speech and ignore what's in the background noise. And with hearing loss or with untreated hearing loss, all of these four key tasks may become more difficult for us because we're putting more stress and more energy on trying to really hear. So age-related hearing loss is really a growing concern. We know that communication is the building blocks to connection, and this is a fundamental part of this is really hearing. It's been recognized that unaided hearing loss, so if you have a hearing loss that's not being aided with hearing aids or any type of treatment, can increase the likelihood of social disengagement and poor quality of life. And there's growing evidence and research to show that for those with hearing loss, they're at risk of cognitive decline. So even those with a very mild hearing loss are at risk of developing cognitive decline or dementia relative to their normal hearing counterparts. And also auditory deprivation from not being able to hear can increase one's susceptibility to cognitive decline. Okay, so dementia, as we know, is a global challenge, and there's a ton of people, around 50 million people in the world living with dementia in 2015, and this number is expected to double and triple in the coming decades due to the fact that people are living longer. So it's definitely a very important and very crucial that we identify and treat the risk factors that are associated with cognitive decline and dementia throughout a person's lifetime, and to bring this to a person's awareness. Hearing loss, as we know, is the most modifiable risk factor for dementia. So hearing loss is considered the most modifiable risk because if eliminated, this could reduce the chances of having dementia by 9%. Okay, so this is a study published in 2017 by Livingston and colleagues, and they showed that this could be reduced by 9% if hearing loss was treated and taken care of. Several studies have also shown that the mean age in which the presence of hearing loss was shown to increase dementia risk is 55 years. And so at 55 years old, the presence of hearing loss can already increase the dementia risk. So we don't really have to wait for when we're older, 60, 70, 80 years old, to be concerned about the relationship of hearing loss and dementia and cognitive decline. And also we see that mild levels of hearing loss, as just mentioned in the previous slide, can increase the risk of cognitive decline in individuals who were cognitively intact at baseline. Okay, so in this study, they looked at, it's a cohort study where they looked at individuals at baseline, where they had normal cognitive function. Years down the road, they had some degree of mild hearing loss, and they saw an increased risk of further cognitive decline due to the fact that they had this mild degree of hearing loss. So let's dive a little deeper into hearing loss and cognitive decline. So this is a study, again, by Frank Lin and colleagues at Johns Hopkins in the Public Health Department. So this looked at identifiable risks for dementia and cognitive decline that could be prevented with appropriate treatment. And we can see hearing loss is one of the 8 to 9%. Also along that avenue, we have alcohol use, obesity, hypertension, traumatic brain injury, smoking, depression, social isolation, and so on. Okay. So again, dementia has been this rising concern in the healthcare industry, and estimated cost to be $1 trillion. So the medical cost for treating dementia is extremely, extremely high. And given that hearing loss is a primary risk factor in a large percentage of dementia cases, it's very important that we make appropriate referrals to our patients who have hearing loss, and treat these patients appropriately so that we're reducing the risk factor percentage, and also in parallel, reducing the high medical costs that are associated with treating and managing dementia in our aging population. So next, we're going to look at some possible mechanisms of hearing loss and cognitive decline. So here are some of the theories that have been proposed to explain this complex interaction and some common pathophysiological mechanisms of cognitive decline and hearing impairment. And here are what they include. So firstly, we have increased cognitive load, changes in brain structure and function, common genetic and pathological causes. So these include vascular changes, microvascular disease, metabolic disturbances, nutritional factors, inflammation, and so on, as well as a social disengagement. So we can see from this chart, hearing impairment is, the cause could be due to something age-related. Sorry, give me 1 second. The light all of a sudden turned off in the room. So here, age-related changes, changes in the central auditory processing. This could also be due to age, and also peripheral auditory dysfunction, likely due to age or other types of conditions on top of that, leading to these various 4 categories. So cognitive load changes, brain structure, isolation, and poor communication. Again, the leading outcome is impaired cognitive functioning, Alzheimer's disease pathologies, dementia, cognitive decline, and so on. So increased cognitive load is one of the theories that's developed more recently in 1998 by a psychologist named John Sweller. This shows that a cognitive load is defined as the cognitive effort or amount of information processing necessary to perform a specific task. This shows that if learning the task requires too much effort, their learning will be affected because cognitive capacity in the working memory is limited. Hearing loss probably will increase the cognitive effort required to process and understand speech, since reduced or distorted sensory input will require the brain to work harder. And an excessive cognitive load dedicated to auditory processing in everyday life could cause relevant brain structure changes. This could cause changes like neurodegeneration to other areas of cognitive processing, such as working memory, so leading to this vicious cycle where cognitive resources available for auditory perception are reduced. Okay, so this is one of the theories of increasing cognitive load due to hearing loss. Next, we have changes in brain structure and function. So there's a great study also by Frank Lin and his colleagues that looked at the association of hearing impairment with brain volume changes in older adults. And this is a publication, you can reference it here. I've attached the title in 2014, where they showed that MRI studies to demonstrate that hearing loss is correlated with reduced volume of the entire brain, as well as the primary auditory cortex in the temporal lobe. We can see in this MRI image, it's pretty clear even to the untrained eye. In picture A, this is a normal brain in a young subject. Okay, so there's no age-related changes in the brain. B is a normal brain in an older individual. We can see some slight differences compared to the young subject. And lastly, we have C, which is a temporal brain atrophy in a 68-year-old patient with asymmetric sensory neural hearing loss, or asymmetric severe sensory neural hearing loss, as indicated by this red arrow here. We can see differences between the black arrow and the red arrow. Okay, so we can see brain and structural changes where we see reduced volume in the primary auditory cortex area, as well as the temporal lobe in folks with hearing loss. Social isolation and disengagement is another mechanism that is underlying this connection between hearing loss and brain changes. Communication difficulties that are associated with hearing loss can encourage solitude, and there's a lot of studies to show that. So social disengagement is a great risk factor for cognitive disorders, reduced cognitive stimulation, apathy, and as well as depression. In fact, social interactions become more difficult in folks with hearing loss because it's difficult for these patients to engage in conversations where there's excessive background noise, and they can very easily fall into the listening fatigue and no longer want to participate socially. Social isolation also promotes negative biological mechanisms. So there are studies that looked at inflammatory markers and inflammatory status in the patient's overall body, looking at blood markers of inflammation. And they saw that there was an increase in general inflammation status, which is a major risk factor for damages to brain function. So not only does not engaging socially affect the person's mood, the person's anxiety, depression, solitude, loneliness, there are also biological mechanisms that can be revealed with blood tests and markers of inflammation that showed that this is a risk factor for brain changes. So delays in treatment for hearing loss. Research shows that the average adult will wait about 6 to 12 years before seeking help for their hearing. And there's many reasons as to why this happens. I've listed a few here. There's sometimes negative comments about hearing aids. They make me feel old, they make me look old, and so on. Also, people will say, my hearing isn't that bad. It's only in the high frequencies. It's not that bad. So that can really delay a person wanting and seeking help for hearing loss treatment. Sometimes folks can also blame others. Okay, so they say, you know, other people don't speak slowly, other people mumble, or they're just not loud enough. So these are just some of the reasons as to, you know, the excuses they give to themselves of why there are delays and why they don't want to pursue treatment for their hearing loss. Next, we'll look at the importance of treating hearing loss and what happens when hearing loss is treated versus left untreated. Dementia and cognitive decline is not a normal part of aging. Okay, so dementia is an umbrella term to describe a range of symptoms associated with cognitive impairment and associated structural changes in the brain. Several symptoms of dementia include impaired intellectual function, difficulty solving problems, impaired expressive language, behavioral problems, and so on. So if a person has hearing loss, there's a greater chance of them developing the dementia. And this was published by a study in 2020 in the Lancet Commission report that, again, hearing loss is one of the top risk factors for dementia. Hearing loss makes the brain work harder, forcing the person to really have to strain to fill in the gaps of what they're missing in the conversation. Treating hearing loss is a very effective solution to delay the onset of cognitive impairment and maintain good cerebral or brain function. So treating hearing loss in people with cognitive impairment may help by improving communication, improving their quality of life, reducing behavioral symptoms of dementia, and also reducing the stress for families and caregivers. So if these positive effects are achieved in different ways, so for example, if increasing cognitive load theory is valid, hearing enhancement should reduce the effort required for auditory processing and therefore redirect all of this cognitive task and reducing the progression of brain atrophy. Currently, treatment of hearing loss in patients is based on 3 clear options: hearing aids, amplification devices, and lastly, cochlear implants if their hearing loss severity warrants the use of implants. So a study from Johns Hopkins, again, this is a study from Franklin and his team. They've done substantial work in the past 15 years or so to look at this hearing loss and dementia prevalence. Showed that seniors with hearing loss are significantly more likely to develop dementia over time than those who have intact hearing. And interventions, even as simple as hearing aids, could delay or prevent dementia by improving patients' hearing. So this was a recent paper published in 2023, which looks at hearing loss and dementia prevalence in older adults in the United States. So again, the mechanisms to maintain or enhance cognitive reserve is this link between hearing loss and dementia, and this looks at the reduced cognitive stimulation. So how treatments and appropriate referrals can prevent dementia, we have 2 modifiable pathways, including this neuropathological damage and maintaining cognitive reserve. So by treating and managing hearing loss, we're hoping to maintain cognitive reserve and therefore preventing our dementia cases. So we know that treating hearing loss is very important, reducing the risk of dementia, cognitive decline, and helping the individual engage in more social situations, decreasing, their loneliness, depression, and so on. Untreated hearing loss can have a lot of consequences. Okay, so this can create communication barriers, as mentioned earlier. Hearing is vital for communication. So hearing loss can create barriers in communication that can damage personal relationships as well as professional lives. That leads to isolation, depression, and withdrawal socially. studies have shown that untreated hearing loss can lead to diminished psychological and overall health, social rejection and loneliness, reduced awareness and increased risk to personal safety, impaired memory and ability to learn new tasks, fatigue, tension, stress, depression, negativity, frustration, and anger. Okay, so these are all things that can result if hearing loss is untreated due to this communication barrier. So what can be done? Hearing aids, cochlear implants, all of these treatments depend on the severity and the cause of hearing loss, as well as the patient's lifestyle and their listening needs. So treatment options include hearing aids, assistive listening devices, communication strategies, support groups and counseling, and also informational sessions like this one to really learn about hearing health. Environmental modifications, and oral rehabilitation. Okay, so these are all ways that we can treat or help with a person's hearing loss. So we're going to talk about some neurocognitive benefits of hearing aid use. So why are hearing aids and treating hearing loss so beneficial? So when speech sounds are missing or attenuated due to hearing loss, so the brain changes as a result of this altered auditory stimulation. So the human brain is really accustomed to the full range of speech sounds. And when some or all of these speech sounds are missing due to hearing loss or due to decreased hearing, your brain will change as a result of that. When the brain is being stimulated exclusively using visual input, so when a person has hearing loss, they're more reliant on the things that they see. Some previously defined auditory areas respond to visual stimuli. So that's why folks with hearing loss or longstanding hearing loss may be very good at lip reading. Okay, so a lot of this stuff, so a lot of this brain that's used for auditory areas will respond to the visual stimulus, such as lip reading. With more severe hearing loss, so as a person's hearing loss gets worse over time, the frontal and prefrontal areas of the brain will become more active, suggesting more effortful listening. And so people will have to strain more to be able to listen and comprehend, and this will result in more listening fatigue. So they'll become tired after social situations, and eventually they might not want to participate in them because hearing and trying to listen and trying to pay attention to conversations will get them so tired. And the study showed that after 6 months of hearing aid use, these brain changes are reversed. Okay, so this shows that the earlier you treat and you acknowledge the hearing loss and you try to access treatment, there can be reversals in the negative brain changes due to lack of hearing or lack of auditory stimulation. So there's another study that looks at how hearing aids improve brain function. We have subjects that are 50 to 60 years old with bilateral sensory neural hearing loss who never used hearing aids. What they did in this study was to analyze the performance on cognitive test measures before, during, and after 6 months of hearing aid use. So what they looked at was working memory, selective attention, as well as processing speed. So in this study, they had these subjects wear hearing aids for an average of 8 hours a day for 6 months. And by the end of the study, they improved working memory in this group of subjects by 14%, improved selective attention by 20%, and they also increased processing speed by 0.2 seconds. So from 1.4 seconds to 1.2 seconds. So you can see the improvements in hearing the improvements from hearing aids in brain function in just 6 months of use. So it can show you the power of treating hearing loss and what it does to the brain. So the reason why sometimes hearing loss is not treated or hearing deficiencies are not treated is the barriers to, or include the barriers to hearing health care. Okay, so hearing loss is really a hidden disability. You can't tell the fact that someone has a hearing loss just by looking at them. So it's not like something you can see, like a broken arm or a broken leg. Sometimes people with mild to moderate hearing loss just seemed a bit confused, and they seem to not be fully participating in a conversation, and they don't really know what's going on. But other than that, it's pretty much a hidden disability. There's also a shortage of information until recently. So there has not been a lot in the realm of hearing health until there's this big spark in the relationship between hearing loss and cognition. So prior to that, there wasn't really much information, or information may be misleading or or incorrect. So there, in the past, there was information about, hearing aids are not affordable. They're so expensive that, you can't really afford a hearing aid unless you have a lot of money. However, we know now that, they can be a great investment, and and people have some insurance coverages for their hearing aids. And lastly, there's always been this stigma that we're trying to break with the fear of looking old with wearing hearing aids. So hearing loss is subject to a lot of prejudice and misconception. So despite the prevalence of hearing loss, people still suffer from the stigma. When people feel ashamed of their hearing loss, they really refuse to acknowledge it, which can lead to disruptions and delays in their treatment. So it's really important that we get the word out about the benefits and the consequences of the benefits of treating hearing loss and the consequences of untreated hearing loss, so that more folks are aware of its importance and how it can affect their later years of life. So prevention and hearing care. So the first thing we want to always do is implement good communication strategies, and this does not take a lot from, financially. It just requires some good habits. So some good communication strategies include staying away from noisy environments when talking, really looking at the speaker, and also advocating for yourself, asking the speaker to repeat themselves if you're not hearing well. So all of these are good communication strategies that you can implement even in the own comfort of your home. So not talking across the room, not screaming up and down the stairs, and so on. Next, we can establish a hearing baseline. So if you feel like you have difficulties hearing, come see an audiologist and get a baseline hearing test. And if there is a hearing loss, or if there are changes in the auditory system, come back for routine hearing tests to monitor progression or to document stability. Are there changes? Is my hearing changing over time? So we always want to make sure that our hearing is stable, and if there's progressions, we want to make sure we catch it and we and we give it appropriate treatment. Next, we want to take preventative and protective measures. This includes the use of hearing protection when around loud noises, such as attending concerts, lawn mowing, doing construction work, and so on. We know that with age-related hearing loss, if there's an addition of a noise factor, this can really exacerbate this age-related hearing decline, because age and noise, there's a synergistic effect. So we want to make sure that we're taking preventative measures with noise. And lastly, we want to wear hearing aids when appropriate. If there is a noticeable degree of hearing loss, clinically significant or relevant hearing loss, we want to treat our hearing loss with amplification, and this includes hearing aids. Modern digital hearing aids can help if you're suffering from hearing loss or tinnitus, and there's been great advancements in the technology for that. So even though hearing loss due to age is something that we cannot control, we cannot slow it down, there are steps you can take to prevent your hearing loss from getting worse, and these are some things that we can do. Okay, so there are some low or no tech solutions. Now everything, just to clarify some things I've mentioned in the previous slide, that it's not only the hearing aid or technology to help. There are some low-tech solutions, such as when communicating, face the speaker, don't talk from another room, or don't sit with your back facing the noise. Also, when in a noisy environment, such as at a noisy restaurant or at a bar, try to sit with your back facing the wall. Try not to sit in the center of a noisy room. As for some behavioral solutions, as someone with hearing loss, we can ask the speaker to repeat or rephrase. And when talking to someone with hearing loss, we want to get their attention before starting to speak and ask them to speak slowly and clearly. Okay, so these are ways that we can improve hearing and improve the listening experience. So for most people with hearing loss, use of hearing aids can provide great benefits, including improved overall health, improved professional services, and improved emotional well-being. Studies have also shown that people who treat their hearing loss have been shown to have higher quality of life and self-esteem than those who don't seek treatment. So for those who obtain a hearing test, if you have hearing loss, your audiologist will likely recommend hearing aids. And fortunately, in the recent years, hearing aids have become smaller and more advanced in terms of technology and what they can do. And there's a lot that they can do. So they can connect with your smartphone and other devices. And there's a lot of other features, such as noise reduction, directionality, management with feedback in the hearing devices that are customed to fit your personal needs. So there's a study that looked at over 2,000 subjects with hearing loss and found that 1/3 of them, after they've considered hearing aids, saw improvements in mental health, emotional health, self-confidence, sense of independence, sense of safety, physical health, work relationships, and so on. So we can see that really treating hearing loss and wearing hearing aids and getting appropriate management can really help individuals. So this study saw an improvement in 33%, which is really excellent. Hearing aids have improved greatly with the advancement in technology. So they're no longer big and bulky. These modern hearing aids are smaller and more feature-packed than their predecessors, with a lot of upgraded and these excellent new features: noise reduction, speech enhancement, Bluetooth and wireless connectivity, wind noise reduction, directionality, feedback management, and also rechargeable batteries. So we no longer have to fumble with the small batteries. We can just put them in a charger in the evenings. There's also many different sizes and styles of our hearing aids, so we can find one that appeals and fits for your lifestyle as well as the cosmetic preferences. So there are custom hearing aids that are behind the ear, and they can be designed to fit your needs. So we do offer hearing aids at both of the San Francisco and the Stockton clinics of the University of the Pacific. The price range depending on the type of hearing loss that they treat and the technology to match your lifestyle, and also accessories that you'd like to purchase to go along with to go along with the things that you need and use every day. Price of hearing aids will include the service, warranty, and repair. And here are some of the price ranges. So in the San Francisco clinic, it's about $3,500 to $6,500 for a pair, typically with a 5-year service plan. And the Stockton clinic recently has a new program. They offers $2,500 for a pair with 1-year service for a previous model. So previous models are just as good. So these hearing aids come out with new models every year, just like iPhones. Okay, so with you don't always need the newest and the iPhone with the most packed features. Sometimes a cheaper option can be sufficient for your needs. So that's something that we can consider as well. So in terms of summary, just to wrap everything up about this on this conversation about the consequences of untreated hearing loss and the benefits and the changes to our hearing health with treatment. So hearing impairment is an independent and modifiable risk factor for cognitive decline. We know that hearing rehabilitation and hearing restoration could positively impact the brain function in our older adults by improving both attention and memory. And also, there's been progressive limitations in cognitive skills, functional independence, and social relationships in patients with cognitive decline and hearing loss. So we can see that hearing loss is one of the very important things that we can manage to so that we have healthy aging, healthy hearing, and lastly having a healthy brain. So with this, it's essential that we understand the underlying mechanisms and the correlations between hearing loss and cognition. This can help prevent the onset of hearing disorders, and also, if there is already existing hearing loss, ways to treat this so that we reduce the chances of cognitive impairment. Okay, so with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that we may have from the audience.
Does anyone have any questions?
Yours, unmute.
Anna, do you have any questions? Okay, you can start talking. Yeah.
Oh,
I can hear you.
everything you said was well done, and I appreciate the information. And the brain, to find out that the brain and the ears, how close they work together. That was interesting. Thank you very much.
Not a problem. Thank you for attending and participating.
Yeah. To the one before, but with Dr. What was his name? The Fadi, F-A-D-I-N-A.
Oh, Dr. Fadi Najim?
Yeah, he did one. When was it?
I think a few months ago, I think he talked about hearing aid processing, is correct?
Yeah. Oh, in May. It was in May. Yeah. And I'm sorry I waited so long before I got the hearing aid. Probably could have been helped sooner by makes all the difference. Yeah.
That's great to hear that you're benefiting so much from the hearing aids.
I really do. And my daughter can always tell when we are yelling and screaming at each other. She won't know, do I have my little fixtures on or not? Oh, right. we attend a lot of meetings, and that's important. One time I thought it was the speakers that weren't working, and I found out later that it was my ears that weren't working. So makes a lot of difference now. I
Glad to
recommend
hear.
I recommend them to anybody.
Can you tell us how to make an appointment?
Sure. Dr. Gale, or I can put this in the chat. Are you located in Stockton or in San Francisco?
San Francisco.
Okay, so I will provide you with the phone number for the San Francisco clinic. Here we go. It's in the chat. Sorry,
Actually,
I just realized.
I just shared the screen again.
Yes.
You can see it here.
I just realized I forgot to go over this last slide. But if you would like a hearing appointment, a hearing evaluation, feel free to contact us.
Thank you. This was an excellent presentation. Really well done.
Thank you.
And just to remind everyone that the recording of this webinar will be posted on our clinic website in a couple of weeks. So if you have any friends or family who you would like to share this webinar, go ahead and go to the website, our website, and access it from there. Anyone else have any questions?
Mhm.
Can I ask what level of hearing impairment do you recommend a hearing aid?
So this varies per individual. I think it's best for you to seek an audiologist to get your hearing tested and to see what they recommend. Sometimes there are folks with normal hearing and they still can benefit from a hearing aid.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Mhm. That's what I did. Went in for the hearing aid in San Francisco. You on 5th Street, 5th and Howard? Is that where you are?
Yes, we're on 5th and Mission.
Yeah. Do you remember Dr. Billheimer?
Oh, Dr. Billheimer, yes.
Yeah, when he was there,
Mhm, mhm.
we enjoyed him. He laughed.
That's great.
Because I waited so long. And then afterwards, seeing how well it was working for me, that I could have done it sooner.
That's great. And thank you for sharing your experiences, your positive experiences with the audience here.
Yeah. So I recommend it. I got a little lady, she's waiting now for the information. So, and it says, when you make your appointment, to mention that you attended this meeting today.
That's
So,
great.
yeah. So that was very well done. Thank you.
The website for the recording, to get the recording.
The recording will be posted on YouTube at our University of the Pacific Hearing and Balance Center YouTube channel.
And I will type in the website right now in the chat.
Thank you.
But it won't be available until a couple weeks, okay? So just keep checking. But you can access previous videos, that previous webinars that we did on there right now.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Right. Good.
All right, so if there's no other questions, please feel free to contact us if you'd like to schedule an appointment. Or also you can also, reach out to us via email if you like as well. I think I have my email on the front of that.
So I have one question. What's the relationship of hearing aid to the tinnitus?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I believe there has been a webinar on that, but I can tell you some information right now. In terms of hearing aid can really help people with tinnitus, because for people with tinnitus, it's one of the major causes of that is in older adults is hearing loss. So once we feed the information back to the brain, the missing information from our hearing loss, our tinnitus will no longer be as perceptible. So hearing aids can definitely help with tinnitus. Sometimes we can also put in hearing tinnitus programs into our hearing aids, and that can can help us play some music and can help us play some tones that can calm our auditory system so that our tinnitus becomes more manageable.